All right, so we've always wondered this. Does size really matter? Hey everyone, I'm Dave with Beastmade Reviews, of course a channel dedicated to reviewing quality at different price points. All right, today I have a video about size, specifically thickness, and specifically ring gauges of cigars. Does it really matter, and how does it affect the overall flavor of the cigar? And while looking around, it was a little bit hard to find cigars that offered all the sizes I was really looking for here. A lot of times in each vitola of cigar, they might offer maybe 3 different sizes or ring gauges, but you don't really have cigars too often that have a whole wide range of vitolas, anywhere from Lancero all the way up to something really fat like maybe a 60 ring gauge. But I did find one brand with one cigar in particular that had everything I was looking for, and it's super popular, and that is the Oliva Serie V. Now, Oliva is obviously one of the just powerhouses in the cigar world. They have just an amazing portfolio of cigars, a lot of great stuff. And the Serie V is one of the more popular cigars out there. They have the Serie V, then the Serie V Maduro, then the Serie V Milanio, and then the Serie V Milanio Maduro. It gets a little bit confusing, but the Serie V, classic Serie V, is what we're gonna be talking about today. And this one is so popular that they have at least 8 different sizes available. We're not gonna be talking about all of them today, but we're gonna be talking about 5 of them. Now, Oliva does have a kind of sampler of the Serie V line, and I actually have that here, but it doesn't have all the sizes that I'm really looking for. It has a couple of different sizes, and this is also really good too, and in some ways, this is kind of a greatest hits of the Serie V. But today, I really want to focus on what is the main difference in ring gauges? What do you really get out of it? And then, which ring gauge do I think is the best, and which one is the best to get for this Serie V? Now, Cigar Page actually made a custom 5-pack available. They have all the sizes that I'm going to be mentioning here. Can't link to them on this video, but I have more information about it on my website. I'll have a link down below to my BioSites website. I have some kind of curated accessories. If you need any accessories there, those are some of my favorite pieces. So if you like this type of content, you can go and find more information there if you want to go and try these for yourselves. Now let's talk a little bit about ring gauges in particular. The ring gauge is really the thickness of the cigar. They use a ring gauge, it looks like a ring, that they use to gauge the thickness of that cigar. The cigars are measured in millimeters for their circumference of their ring gauge, and then inches in their length. And the reason this kind of makes a difference at all is because of the way that a cigar is constructed is with the filler, the tobacco that fills it, and then the binder, which bunches everything together, and then the wrapper, which is what you see on the outside that wraps everything together. Those are the 3 main components of a cigar. And so, if you have a larger cigar, you're gonna get less of the proportion of wrapper than you are to the filler. And if you have a smaller ring gauge cigar like a Lancero, you're gonna get more of the wrapper and less of the filler. And so that brings us to the Oliva Serie V. Now, this is a highly rated cigar, and from Oliva's website, they describe this as a complex blend of Nicaraguan long filler tobaccos, blended with specially fermented Jalapa Valley Ligero, and finished with a high priming sun-grown wrapper. This filler blend exhibits complex tobacco with rich coffee and dark chocolate tones. A subtle and well-balanced spice is present throughout. So here are the 5 sizes that I got of the Serie V. The first one is a Lancero 7x38. The second is what they call the number 4, which is a 5x43. The next is the Toro, which is a 6x50. Next is the Torpedo, which is 6x56. And they also have a different Torpedo as well, which is a different size. This is just the 6x56 Torpedo. And the last size that I have here is the double Toro, which is 6x60. So now that we're gonna try these, I think the order that is best to do this in is to go back and forth between different thicknesses. So the first one we're gonna try is the Lancero, then the next one is gonna be the double Toro, the 60 gauge, then we're gonna go back to the number 4, and then we're just gonna ping pong back and forth. So first, let's talk about the Lancero. And let me just say a quick thing about Lanceros. I love Lanceros. I know they're not the most popular cigar out there, but they have just a cult following, and I can see why. These are a great size, I think, and they can also widely vary in how they're constructed. There usually aren't that many cigar rollers who roll Lanceros, usually only a couple per company, and so you really need the best rollers to roll these. But when you get a good one, man, are they good. And this Lancero is good. I think it's an incredible one. I think of the bunch here, maybe this is going to be jumping the gun. The Lancero is one of my favorites. I think it's absolutely incredible. It has an effortless draw, tons of smoke output, and the smoke is creamy. The flavors are definitely in line with what they mentioned on the website. I get coffee, I get cream, I get some spice, dark chocolate, some oak, and a hint of white pepper. The pepper is a little bit more forward, especially at the start of this cigar. And this is the first time that I actually tried the Serie V, and I tried it with the Lancero, and I could definitely see why this is just a big hit. It's an incredible cigar. Now, as far as the construction of this, I did have to touch it up a few times, so if that bothers you, that you might have to consider that. But I absolutely love this. It's dark and roasty. It's punchy with tons of flavor, really bold flavors. And the flavors do change over time, but that's pretty much what I get mostly out of this. I get medium full body, medium full flavor. It's not too strong. It doesn't really kick you in the face, which I'm really thankful for. This is just a great cigar. All right, next one that we tried was the Double Toro, the 6x60. Now, I can't remember that many times that I've tried a 60 ring gauge, but when I tried this one, this was a really interesting difference. There was a noticeable difference between this and the other one. The first thing I noticed was that the flavors on this weren't as punchy as they were on the Lancero, which is interesting. I still get a lot of the same flavors. I still get coffee and cream and some spice and some of the roasty notes, but I get more sweetness at the start and almost no spice at the start. And also get a hint of leather in this, which was not present in the Lancero. The smoke smelled great. It has a great aromatic smell, which I really love on this one. There's a little bit more nuttiness and more of a toffee forwardness. There's more almond in this. And I think in the second third, it really redeemed itself. In the second third, I got this really noticeable and very pleasant sandalwood note. And that was a really welcome change here. But I will say the draw, not as good. The smoke output, not as good. The burn, not as good. I had to touch it up a few times, and just overall, I had to baby the cigar constantly. But it was interesting, and it was very different from the Lancero. All right, the next one that I tried was the number 4. And the number 4 is a 43 ring gauge, which is just a step up from the Lancero. I thought this might be pretty much in the same ballpark as the Lancero, but I was kind of wrong on that. Again, it had some of the same flavor profiles, but it was not as spicy at the front. Still creamy, still coffee, still nutty, still roasty. I get some chocolate and coffee, but this one was more bitter and more toasted with a little bit of earthiness. It was still woody, but it was maybe a little bit less woody than the other two. It seemed maybe a little bit more balanced, but a little bit muted at the same time. This was still good, but it wasn't as bold as the other ones. The burn on this was better than the other two, though not perfect. The draw was okay, the smoke output was okay. This was interesting. It was almost like a reverse Lancero. It had different qualities than the other one did. Less spice at the beginning, more sweetness, and a little bit more overall just muted flavors. It was a little bit more subtle, and maybe some people might prefer that to the Lancero, but just an interesting contrast there. All right, the next one that I tried was the 5x56 Torpedo. And now again, I mentioned there's a different Torpedo that they have in a different size, but this one was the 5x56, so not too far off from the 60 ring gauge. I tried to cut and light everything the same, and especially on this Torpedo, I tried to get the most amount of the point off, so I can kind of have more of an apples to apples comparison with the cut. But as far as flavors here, it was still less spicy than the Lancero, but punchier than the 60 ring gauge. It was fuller in almost every way than the 60 gauge, both in flavor and in smoke output and texture of the smoke as well. Bolder, I think, is a great way to describe this. Still some of the same flavors here: coffee, a little leather, caramel. There's other notes like almond and then a beautiful sweetness throughout. And on this size, again, I got a little bit more of that sandalwood note. And there was a little bit of a twinge of maybe an herbalness to it, which was interesting. The burn was really good. The draw was a little bit tighter, but not as bad as a 60 ring gauge. The smoke output was really good as well. Great construction. I did not have to touch this up at all. This Torpedo was great, and whoever is the roller at Oliva making the torpedoes, they do a great job. All the torpedoes that I've had from them have been just stellar. So they need a raise, is all I'm saying. All right, and last but not least was the Toro. Now, Toro is usually a good size for me. That's usually one that I like to reach for. That's just a good go-to size. And of the bunch, this was so good. I was not expecting to like this one as much as I did. Maybe I should have expected it. And again, it has all the same qualities, flavors as the other ones do. The coffee, roasted, some spice in there, creamy, great smoke output. But it really hits the balance of flavor and boldness here. There's not that much spice at the start, which some people will really appreciate. That's less sweet than some of the other Vitolas here. I get more woods. There's a little bit of a bready quality. There's also a little bit of a raisin or date 38-like quality at the start too. And in the final third, you get more of the spice and oak and woodiness. And on this one, I also got maybe a little bit of that sandalwood, but maybe not as much. Great, absolutely great smoke smell in the air, medium full body and texture and flavor. And for the construction, this had the absolute best construction. The best burn, no touch-ups required, great draw, perfect, just right away. It's just a really great cigar. Overall, I was really impressed with the Oliva line. What are some of my takeaways about ring gauges? Well, ring gauge definitely affects flavor, and you definitely get more of the wrapper. If you try a Lancero and a thick ring gauge back to back, you can definitely taste the difference there. But I think a lot of these companies are making these cigars really well, and they blend them in a way where they're still pretty close. All of these, even though there were differences in the cigars, are still pretty close in flavor. But there were some obvious noteworthy cigars here. Now, my first favorite one here, probably no surprise, was the Lancero. The Lancero, I think, is one of the kings of this bunch. Even though the burn and the draw was not as good as the other ones, it was a great, great cigar. My next favorite was probably one I should have expected, and that's the Toro. The Toro was a huge win. I don't know if this is their best seller, but this is probably one of the best cigars they have in the Serie V line. It's incredible. Great balance of flavor. You get everything in this, but the draw and everything about it is great. The experience is great. My third favorite was the Torpedo. As I've mentioned, the Torpedo is just great. The rollers who are making the Torpedoes do an absolutely great job, and everyone that I've tried has been so good in the construction and flavor overall. And my last two were the 60 ring gauge and then the number 4, or the 43 ring gauge. Both of those I thought were okay, but not great. The 60 ring gauge was good, and it had some kind of noteworthy things there, like it being maybe sweeter and woodier in some parts, but the overall construction and experience wasn't that great. The number 4 I thought was the opposite. The number 4 had way better construction, and it was a better experience, but the flavor was more muted overall. I guess my one takeaway with ring gauges is really that the main difference, besides the flavor differences, was the combustion. For one, the Lancero burned a little quicker, and the 60 ring gauge burned a lot slower. And at both extremes, both the 60 and the 38, there was some waviness and some touch-ups that were required. Also, the really popular sizes like the Toro and the Torpedo, they were absolutely fantastic as far as draw and burn. They were great. Maybe the quality is generally better on those, but I think also too, it just might be something with the actual size itself. Having something in that middle range, I found, was just really ideal for the rate of burn and the quality of the burn and the combustion. That was just really pleasant overall. I really liked the flavor differences. It was great going from a 38 all the way up to a 60 back to back. It was really interesting and fun. Both of them were great in their own ways, but I still think, me personally, I really love the Toro size. I know it's almost a boring choice. It's probably the most popular size, and I still love it. It was the best cigar out of the bunch, I think. So if you're looking for good recommendations on the Serie V line, I think the Toro, absolutely just a great go-to. Definitely get that one. If you like that size, it's gonna be killer. The Lancero is also amazing, and I really recommend that, but I know a lot of people don't like Lanceros because maybe the thinner ring gauge or what have you. I think the Lancero is phenomenal and maybe my favorite in flavor, but as far as overall experience, the Toro is just a king there. That's a great cigar. So does size matter? It does. And I was surprised to see the differences between all of these. Maybe it shouldn't surprise me that much, as it's exactly the way that you would expect it to be, but it was great experiencing it for myself, and also great seeing that the Toro, kind of the go-to size, is still just one of the best. But if you like more information about these, definitely check out my BioSites website. I'll have more info there about where you can find this 5-pack. And if you'd like to support me, you can go to my Patreon, or you can go to the links down below and buy yourself something nice. I'll see you next time. I'm Dave with Peacemaker Reviews. Bye.